Hey guys, it is Carly here bringing you episode number 17 of my entire horror movie collection, and we are moving right along with the VHS stack. This is my second shelf on the big VHS shelf, so I'm just going to go ahead and get right on into it. And first up we have Friday the 13th here. Now this is one that I've had since I was a little kid. This might have even been my mom's before I was born. I just know it's really old and pretty beat up. I don't know what happened here, but the the cover here is ripped off, and the cover art I've always enjoyed because I never see this cover art anywhere or anything like that. So I've always kept it for that reason mainly. Unfortunately, I don't know if this VHS works anymore. I'm pretty sure it's broken. I haven't stuck it in to test it out. For the longest time, I thought my copy of Halloween was the tape that broke, but I watched it last year and it was fine. So I'm thinking it is this one that does not play anymore, which is unfortunate because I've had this for so long and it's not one that I really want to get rid of. So it's one that I've just kind of kept on the shelf, even though I'm not really sure if it works. I'll have to pop it in just to see, but either way, I might just hold on to it just because I've always liked the cover art, and it's not fantastic cover art, but like I said, I never really see it anywhere, and I've just had this for so long that it's really hard for me to get rid of. But yeah, that is Friday the 13th. Love the movie. After that, we have Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. JP actually gave me this one for Christmas one year and thought it was pretty cool. I think he found this at Goodwill, and you never really find movies like this at Goodwill, unfortunately. It seems like, I found a lot of classic horror movies there on VHS, but for some reason I never find any of the Friday films or Halloween films, so it was pretty cool to get this. I used to have Part 4 and Part 8 on VHS, but I actually gave those to him to complete his Friday VHS collection. So yeah, pretty exciting to have this one though, and I hope I do find more tapes like this at the store because, like I said, it's just not something that you really find much around here. After that, we have Ghost Ship. Picked this up at a Goodwill a few months back and just picked it up because it was in good condition and I had never seen the movie, and a lot of people say how the movie is kind of boring and the first few minutes are the only good part to it, and I would have to agree. I was pretty bored by this film. It's your typical sort of early 2000s movie. I feel like a lot of movies from that time period had the same sort of feel to them, and I just didn't care for it all that much. Still kind of cool to have on VHS, I suppose, but yeah, not really my favorite or anything like that. After that, we have Godsend. I recently reviewed this one on Body Bags. This is a movie that I saw when I was pretty young. My mom and I watched this along with 1 Hour Photo, and back then we didn't really care for either of the movies, so when I found this movie at Goodwill, I wanted to pick it up and rewatch it to see if maybe I would like it better now that I'm older, because sometimes I find that maybe I was just bored by it or didn't understand it when I was a little kid. But I have to say I did like it a little bit more. I thought the concept behind it was pretty creepy and interesting, but towards the end I got a little bit bored with it again like I did when I was younger, so not much has changed. I feel like I probably liked it a little bit more though this time around, but either way, it's not fantastic or anything like that. After that, we have Halloween, the movie I talked about earlier. I've also had this one since I was really young, and I've always liked this cover art as well because you always see the cover art with the, the pumpkin and the knife, and that's kind of the typical cover art that you see, but yeah, I've had this since I was really young, and this is also really beat up. I used to watch this movie all the freaking time. After elementary school, I would come home and pop this in. It was I don't know, I just loved this movie. I would watch it over and over. It was one of the first horror movies that I've ever seen, and yeah, so this is very special to me, and I'm glad that this tape miraculously still works. It wasn't the best quality, but it still works, and I will always keep this in the collection because it's one of the oldest horror films that I own and one of the first I've ever seen. After that, we have Halloween 6 here. Interestingly enough, I own 4 Halloweens on VHS, and they're all from when I was younger. They're not ones that I recently picked up, so that's pretty cool, and once again, this is one of them. This is a movie that I kind of go back and forth on. When I was young, I really enjoyed it, but upon recent watches, I don't care for it as much. I did watch the producer's cut, and I did not like it more than this film, as many people tend to. I thought it was just kind of weird, and I didn't really like the storyline or anything like that they kind of give to the movie. So yeah, that didn't really help my watching. I have always liked this one though, just because it's got a very Halloween type feel to it. Some of them kind of lack in the feel sometimes, but I feel like this one really captures it pretty well, and I did rewatch it quite a bit when I was younger, but nowadays I just kind of go back and forth. Sometimes I'm in the mood for it, and sometimes I'm just not. After that, we have Halloween H2O. Once again, this box is pretty beat up. It's kind of broken right here, but once again, this is one that I've had since I was pretty young, so it's pretty cool to still own it, and I don't own any of these movies on DVD either, just because I find it kind of pointless to rebuy them since they still work on the VHS. But Halloween H2O, I think this might have been the second Halloween movie that I saw, funny enough. I wanted to watch them all in order, but I think I saw this on TV, or my mom showed it to me, or something like that. So I was always confused when I was younger by the order of the films. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the second one I saw, and this is one of the later ones. So that's kind of weird, but I've always liked this one too. It's one that I kind of go back and forth on as well. I really have to be in the mood for it, but I think it's a pretty awesome follow-up to the first movie. After that, we have Halloween Resurrection. Yeah, once again, I've owned this one forever, and when I was younger, I thought it wasn't that bad. I didn't think it was amazing or anything like that. It's not like it was something that I loved watching, but I would watch it on rotation just like all the other Halloween films and didn't really see a problem with it. It wasn't until I got older that I see how bad it really is, and I rewatched it recently and I just hated it. It's definitely not one that I would go back to anytime soon nowadays, but you know, I guess it's kind of cool to own it on VHS, and I don't ever plan on buying it on any other format, so there is that. After that, we have The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. This is arguably more of a thriller. I mean, it's definitely more of a thriller than a horror movie, but it's got some horrifying elements to it, and I believe it was actually featured on 100 Scariest Movie Moments as well. This is a movie that I always really enjoyed. It was always on TV quite a bit, and I always would watch it because I just really like the storyline and things like that. I think all the performances are pretty solid in it. It kind of has that sort of Lifetime movie feel to it, I guess you could say, but I've always really enjoyed this one, and I think it is a pretty solid thriller that still holds up. After that, we have The Haunting remake here. I actually watched this one before watching the original movie just because I happened to buy this one at Goodwill, and I did not own the original movie. That's kind of the only reason I watched them out of order there, and this definitely isn't the best movie ever. I think it's kind of fun in a way, I guess you can say, but it's definitely a bad remake to such a classic film. Once again, it's a movie from the either early 2000s or late 90s. I'm thinking it is around 2001. I think it might be 1999, actually. I'm terrible with years, but yeah, this definitely feels that way too. It feels sort of like the House on Haunted Hill remake and just all the movies that are coming out around that time that I just don't really care for too much, but I guess it sort of had some fun elements to it, but it's not that great. After that, we have The Hitcher. When I was younger, I absolutely loved this movie. Part of it was because I had a big crush on C. Thomas Howell in this movie, but other than that, it is a pretty solid road horror film. Upon rewatching it recently, I didn't love it as much as I used to, unfortunately. I don't know why, but with that being said, I still think it's pretty solid, and I always love these sort of deserted areas. They're really just kind of in this ghost town throughout the movie, and there's pretty much only like 4 main actors in this film, so I really like that about it. And like I said, I really enjoy road horror, so this was a cool one to get on VHS. I do own it on DVD, but this is in perfect shape here, so I was happy to pick it up and rewatch it. Even though I didn't love it as much as I used to, it's still a solid film. After that, we have Hellraiser here. I think JP also gave me this one for this past Christmas, and this is another cool one to just find at a Goodwill because it's one of the classics. I did own it on DVD, but I passed that DVD on to my mom, I believe. I doubt she'll ever actually watch the movie because she hates gross stuff, and there is a fair amount of gore and gross stuff going on in this film. I enjoyed Hellraiser. You know, I think it's a solid movie. It's not one that I would rewatch a whole lot, and it's not one that I grew up watching or anything like that, but I think it's a pretty solid film, and the effects definitely still hold up in it. After that, we have Horror Express. I recently tried to watch this one the other day, but I kind of wasn't in the mood for watching movies at all when I watched it, so I don't know why I put this one in, because it definitely wasn't the best choice because it is an older movie, but I did like what I saw for the most part. It seemed like a pretty interesting film. I think it might have been it felt like it was a little bit too long, like a lot of older movies tend to be, but other than that, it seemed like a solid movie, and I would like to rewatch this one because I know I've heard people say that they enjoy it, and like I said, I didn't think it was horrible or anything like that, but I was in a really bad mood when I watched it and just not in the mood to watch movies. Sometimes I just get that way where I don't really feel like watching anything, so this was kind of a failed attempt to watch a movie, but like I said, I didn't think it was awful. I just need to pay more attention to it. After that, we have House by the Cemetery, another one that JP got me way back in the day, probably like 2 years ago. This is a cool one to find at a Goodwill as well. It's definitely more beat up, and I will say that the quality of the VHS was awful. It was almost unwatchable. I couldn't really even hear some of the stuff going on in the movie, and viewing it was just really hard to watch. It was really dark and things like that, but at the same time, it kind of gave it more of a creepy feel to it, but this is one that I would definitely like to rewatch on a better format because I thought it was a pretty solid film. I know this is a movie in like a trilogy of films. I don't know if they're all related or anything like that. I'm not too familiar. I think this is the last film in it, and I hear people say it's kind of the weakest one, but with that being said, I found the story was kind of interesting, but the quality kind of took me out of it because it was really hard to pay attention to it, but yeah, definitely one I would like to rewatch on a different format. Still cool to have on VHS though. After that, we have House on Haunted Hill. I've always been a pretty big fan of this. It definitely has its slow moments to it because it is an older movie, but at the same time, it's not a long movie at all. It's only 75 minutes, so you can't really complain, and there are some genuinely creepy moments in this movie that still really creep me out, so I gotta give it that. Yeah, I've always liked this one. I recently picked this one up at Goodwill as well because it was one that I did not own, and it's the perfect type of movie to have on VHS, you know, these older black and white films, so that is pretty cool. And then lastly, for this part, guys, we have I Know What You Did Last Summer on VHS. I also have that box set that I showed recently with all the I Know What You Did Last Summers, but this is another movie that I've had since I was pretty young and grew up watching over and over again. All these VHS that I've had since I was young were ones that I pretty much would always put on all the time, so it's very nostalgic for me, and obviously this is just a 90s movie, but at the same time it's one that I'll probably keep forever because to me it's one of just the classic movies that I watched when I was younger. Since I am, you know, I'm only 21, so this one came out the year I was born, actually, 1997, so I grew up with movies like this, so I kind of hold it near and dear to my heart, even though, you know, it's not a solid movie at all. It's got its issues, and the acting's not too great in it. It's still one that I just love, and I will continue to rewatch, so yeah. That is it for this part here, guys. Hope you are enjoying these videos, and I will try to get the next one out next weekend. Thank you guys once again for joining me, and I will see you for part 18.